Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with Punk's Not Dead by Wrunic, and we are up to chapter 7. We are officially over halfway through.
Okay,
Katsuki said, uncapping his pen and pointing at the problem sheet on the desk in front of Kirishima.
When did things stop making sense to you?
Kirishima sighed. I've got to be honest, I basically stopped understanding math as soon as they added letters. Katsuki took a deep, calming breath. This was going to be harder than he thought. If nothing else, they were only a few months into the school year, so he could probably get Kirishima caught up relatively quickly. Probably.
All right, shitty hair. Get your notes from April.
What? Why?
Math is all connected, dumbass. If you don't get something from back then, you're screwed before we even start.
Katsuki explained.
Ideally, we'd start with the shit from last year, but I'm guessing you're one of those assholes that burns all your notes at the end of the school year.
Kirishima's guilty expression was confirmation enough. He left his seat at the desk. He brought up a chair from the dining room for himself and given Katsuki the actual desk chair, and he grabbed his bag from the corner he'd tossed it into when they came in. After a few minutes of digging, he pulled out a collection of crumpled pieces of graph paper, which he placed on the desk in front of Katsuki.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Kirishima at least had the decency to look properly ashamed. Look, man, I kept forgetting to bring a notebook.
Well, you ain't forgetting now.
Katsuki growled.
Find a notebook. Step 1 is copying all this shit properly.
Kirishima groaned, and Katsuki threw an eraser at his head.
You want to pass math? Shut up and get fucking organized.
After that, things went pretty smoothly. Katsuki managed to get the notes in order while Kirishima found a proper notebook, and had Kirishima ask questions about the material while he copied it out.
Stop cramming your examples into the corners. Can you even tell which step is supposed to come first?
I kinda didn't know before? Katsuki glared at him.
You're supposed to ask me when you don't understand stuff.
I've already asked you a bunch of questions about this topic. I should get it by now. Kirishima replied, biting down on his bottom lip and scratching uncomfortably at the back of his neck. Katsuki took a second to roll up the stack of already copied notes and smacked Kirishima upside the head with it. Hey, what was that for?
Being a fucking idiot. I'm here to help you, you moron.
Kirishima still looked confused, so Katsuki smacked him again, between the eyes this time, to make sure he was paying attention.
Feeling like you should already understand something is unproductive. Sometimes shit takes a while to sink in. Math makes sense to me, so I get through it fast. English takes me fucking ever, because it's a garbage nightmare language with no rules. Am I stupid because English doesn't come easy to me?
Well, no, but...
No fucking buts, shitty hair. Just because it takes you longer doesn't mean it's never going to happen. Got it?
Kirishima paused for a second, then nodded.
Good. Ever heard of the method of loci?
No?
Well, then I'm about to fucking change your life.
Time passes. About an hour later, Kirishima started fidgeting. 10 minutes after that, his stomach started growling.
All right, asshole, break time,
Katsuki said, slamming his pen down next to the practice problems he'd been writing out. Oh, thank God, Kirishima said, dropping his pencil and immediately leaning back in his chair, stretching out so much that his shirt rode up. I thought my brain was going to turn to mush.
Wouldn't be much of a change,
Katsuki grumbled, standing and rolling his shoulders. Kirishima pouted at him, and Katsuki had to resist the urge to hit him again. Well, I was going to offer you a snack, but now I don't think you deserve one.
I wasn't hungry anyway, hair for brains,
Katsuki snarled, though his statement was undercut when he was betrayed by his own body, his stomach letting out a rumble loud enough to rival Kirishima's from earlier. Dude, Kirishima said. He almost sounded impressed. I take it back, but only because I'm kind of afraid that if I don't feed you, you'll eat me.
I'm going to fucking kill you.
Kirishima was annoyingly unconcerned by this, and just got to his feet and stretched again. It's kind of sweet that you think you could take me in a fight. Katsuki knew, deep down, that Kirishima was right. Kirishima willingly fought Uraraka on a fairly regular basis. Katsuki, well, he took care of himself, but his life plans didn't involve him having to fight anyone. Physically, at any rate. Nevertheless, his honor was being questioned, and he wasn't about to take that shit lying down, so he lunged at Kirishima, a move which somehow ended with Kirishima grabbing him by the waist and flipping him into a fireman's carry. "Bro," Kirishima said, and even though Katsuki couldn't see his face, he could hear him holding back a laugh. "Why?"
"Because you're fucking annoying,"
Katsuki yelled, trying and failing to wriggle his way out of Kirishima's grasp. "You realize you can just tell me that instead of trying to tackle me, right?" Kirishima asked, lowering Katsuki back to the floor. He started to make his way towards the door and seemed to be expecting Katsuki to follow. Katsuki almost didn't, just out of spite, but he was still fucking hungry, so he went.
"You never fucking listened to me anyway. Figured I might as well try a new approach."
"That's not true. I definitely listen to you sometimes. I know how to do a step function now," Kirishima protested, nudging Katsuki in the shoulder. "I'm gonna do it, Yuka. I'm gonna quit," Sayuri groaned from her seat at the dining room table, saving Katsuki from calling her son a moron in front of her. "No, you aren't," Yuka answered from the kitchen, where she already seemed to be working on dinner. "They've misused the word metaphor 14 times. 14! They're third years. And by the time you're done with them, they'll never do it again," Yuka said. The whole conversation had the feeling of well-worn argument, almost an inside joke. Katsuki tried to imagine his parents having a conversation like that and came up empty. Kirishima wove his way through the conversation and into the kitchen, leaving Katsuki hovering awkwardly at the dining room threshold. Katsuki was still trying to decide whether he should follow him and risk intruding, or just keep lurking there like a creep, when he heard a call of, "Hey, Bakugou," from the living room. Katsuki blinked in surprise at Toshiko, who scrambled off the couch and ran over, skidding to a halt in front of him. She had apparently progressed to book 6 since he'd been here last, since she had it tucked between her arm and her torso. She was smiling, which was weird. Really, this whole situation was weird. Katsuki wasn't used to kids trying to talk to him. They were usually afraid of him.
"What do you want?"
"Is Eiji reading them?" she asked. It took Katsuki a second to figure out what the fuck she was talking about, but when he did, he scowled.
"Why are you asking me?"
"You won't lie to make me feel better," she replied, grin widening. She didn't look so much like Kirishima, but they smiled the same way. Genuine with lots of fucking teeth.
"Fair. Yeah, he's reading them. He's at the part where Aiden and Winter meet Stella."
"Awesome," she said, bouncing a bit on the balls of her feet.
"Lay off him a bit, okay? He's got to focus on math right now."
Toshiko wrinkled her nose at the mention of math, but nodded anyway. Kirishima, who had reappeared from the kitchen, trapped Toshiko under one arm and started viciously ruffling her hair. "Toshi, stop trying to steal my boyfriend." "I'm not," she exclaimed, swatting at his arm. "Boys are gross." "Damn right," Sayuri called from her seat, making Katsuki snort involuntarily. Kirishima released Toshiko, who immediately went back to the couch, then handed Katsuki an apple and a granola bar. "Yuka wants to know if you're staying for dinner," he said once they were back in his room and had both gotten some food in them. "She's making sushi, so she needs to know how much to make." Katsuki considered his answer for a second. On one hand, his mom was going to pitch the bitch fit of a century if he didn't come home for dinner like he said he would. But on the other hand, sushi. After avoiding whatever bitch fit his mom would inevitably throw if she was denied this one.
"Yeah, I'll stay. I want to get you to at least rational functions by today."
"Cool. I'll go let her know," Kirishima said, collecting Katsuki's apple core and granola bar wrapper and taking off down the stairs. Katsuki took advantage of the brief reprieve to text his mom that he wasn't going to be home for dinner, then set his phone to silent. Kirishima came back shortly after, and they worked until Toshiko was sent to grab them for dinner, which was significantly more chill than last time, mostly because Sayuri still seemed to be exhausted by her students. Katsuki was half tempted to ask Yuka for her recipe, but that seemed like overstepping, considering the circumstances. After they'd finished eating, Kirishima dragged him back upstairs and they worked on math for another few minutes, until there was a resounding clap of thunder outside and all the lights went out. "Oh, awesome!" Kirishima said, immediately abandoning his work to run over to the window to watch the storm. "Bakugou, you've got to come check this out. The rain's bouncing!" Katsuki figured he should probably give up on trying to get Kirishima to do math, at least until the power came back on, and joined Kirishima at the window. He'd never been afraid of storms, but Kirishima's unbridled glee at the rain and lightning wasn't exactly something he understood either, and it only kept him occupied for so long.
"Oi, if we aren't doing math anymore, can you drive me home?"
"Well, I mean, it shouldn't take too long for the power to come back on," Kirishima suggested instead. "I have some stuff downloaded on my laptop. We could always watch a movie. Oh, I found a Winter the Nameless adaptation."
"We don't talk about the movies,"
Katsuki growled, and Kirishima wisely didn't push the subject any further. They ended up agreeing on some action movie with more explosions than plot, which Katsuki was actually kind of enjoying, if only because keeping a running tally of how many times the lead would have died in real life was entertaining. Even that wasn't enough to keep him completely awake, though, especially half-sprawled on Kirishima's ludicrously comfortable bed in near-complete darkness with the steady beat of rain outside. Luckily, before he could actually fall asleep, there was a soft knock at the door. Kirishima paused the movie and called out a, "Come in." "It's nearly 10, Yuka said, opening the door and leaning just her upper torso in the room. "Oh shit," Kirishima said, only loud enough for Katsuki to hear. "I can drive you home. Just give me a second to find my keys." "I was going to say that Bakugou's welcome to stay if he wants. The storm doesn't look like it's letting up anytime soon, and I don't really want you driving in the rain at night," Yuka cut in gently. "Let me know either way, okay? If his parents want him home, Sayuri'll drive you over." "Okay, thanks, Mama." Yuka gave them one last smile, then closed the door. Katsuki turned on his phone, which, as he had predicted, had a whole fuck-ton of missed calls and messages on it. Staying was definitely going to make it worse, but he'd much rather deal with this when he wasn't half asleep.
"Do you mind if I stay?"
Katsuki asked. "Nah, man, not at all," Kirishima said brightly. "We've got a spare futon and everything. Will your parents be okay with it?"
"They won't care,"
Katsuki said, sending a second message to his dad this time. He wouldn't be a pain in the ass about this, at least. "Sweet, I'll go tell Yuka." Kirishima left the bed to go and talk to his moms, and Katsuki took the opportunity to lie down and get comfortable on the assumption that they'd be continuing the movie when Kirishima got back. And if he closed his eyes for a second, well, it couldn't hurt, right? Time passes. Katsuki was jolted awake by a loud bang, followed by a slew of quiet cursing. He sat up, blinking blearily as his eyes adjusted to the dark room. He could just barely make out the figure of Kirishima in the doorway, holding his foot while hopping in place like an idiot. The stupid flexing clock on the wall said it was 4:03.
"What the fuck are you doing awake?"
Katsuki demanded, trying to keep his voice down. There was another banging sound as Kirishima, startled, released his hold on his foot and slammed his hand onto the doorframe. "I could ask you the same thing," he hissed, stepping fully into the room and shutting the door behind him.
"Your grand entrance woke me up,"
Katsuki said dryly. He couldn't tell in the dark, but he knew Kirishima well enough at this point to be sure that he was blushing. "I had to go to the bathroom, and it's not like I have night vision," Kirishima explained, dropping to the floor and adjusting himself so he was under the blanket there, facing away from Katsuki. Katsuki scoffed and was about to settle back under the covers, but his still half-asleep brain finally picked up on the fact that something about this situation wasn't adding up.
"Have you been sleeping on the fucking floor?"
Katsuki snapped, sitting up at once. Kirishima shushed him, shooting a nervous glance at the door. Yeah? You fell asleep on the only bed, man.
You mentioned a futon. I know you mentioned a futon.
I didn't want to wake you up trying to move it in, Kirishima said sheepishly. Katsuki dug the heels of his hands into his eyes. The fucking moron, honestly.
Well, I'm awake now. Let's go get it.
Kirishima shook his head. No way, man. Futons are a pain in the ass to move in daylight. No chance we'd get it in here without waking everyone up.
Switch with me then.
What? No, Kirishima sputtered. You're a guest. I'm not going to make you sleep on the floor. Katsuki really, truly could not fucking believe this.
It's your goddamn bed.
And you're already in it, Kirishima insisted. Might as well stay there. They sat, staring at each other in stubborn, resolute silence until Katsuki had an epiphany.
We could share.
Kirishima made a choking noise, followed by, What?
We could share,
Katsuki repeated more slowly. The bed wasn't huge, but if he moved so he was against the wall, they could probably make it through a few hours left of the night without incident. Besides, what kind of idiot would choose the floor over a bed? Especially someone like Kirishima, who took pride in taking care of his body. Seriously, I'm fine on the floor, Kirishima said, but Katsuki could tell his resolve was flagging.
If you stay on the floor, then I'm joining you,
Katsuki declared, challenging. And then we'll both be fucking miserable and it'll be on you, went unsaid. Kirishima lasted another 2 seconds, then let out a world-weary sigh, picked up the blanket and pillow from the floor, and hesitantly climbed into bed with Katsuki, like he was afraid Katsuki was going to spontaneously change his mind and attack him. Katsuki rolled his eyes and shifted over to the wall to make as much room for Kirishima and his delicate sensibilities as possible. Katsuki had basically fallen asleep on top of him not even 3 weeks ago. This was ridiculous. Because it was 4 in the fucking morning and Katsuki was a reasonable human being, he started to drift off pretty much as soon as he stopped moving, even with Kirishima lying unnaturally still beside him. He moved just enough to kick him in the leg and say,
Fucking relax, shitty hair. I'm not gonna strangle you in my sleep or anything.
Kirishima let out a desperate-sounding laugh. Good to know. Katsuki turned over, propped himself up on his elbow, so he was leaning a bit over Kirishima. He could feel the heat radiating off him, even with the little bit of distance between them, and he understood, somewhat, why this house was kept so fucking cold.
You know it's not the end of the world if we touch, right? I'm used to it with you by now.
That seemed to get through, finally. Kirishima relaxed a bit, and Katsuki dropped onto the pillows again. Crisis averted, he fell asleep within seconds. Time passes. When Katsuki woke up next, it was with the sun in his face. The lights were off, but Kirishima's laptop was plugged in and its charging light was on, so the power must have come back on at some point. He was warm, which was weird. He usually woke up cold at home, and he figured Kirishima's frigid house would be infinitely worse. But somehow during the night, he'd ended up cuddling human space heater Kirishima Eijirou. And not just casually pressed into his side either. One of Katsuki's arms was trapped under Kirishima's back, while the other was slung over his chest and their legs were tangled together. Katsuki managed to maneuver in such a way that he could see Kirishima's face, checking to see whether he was awake or not. He wasn't, although he was drooling a little, which Katsuki's sleep-muddled brain actually had the audacity to find endearing. Kirishima's hair was out of its spikes, which made sense, all things considered. It sure as hell didn't do it by itself, and it would probably have been insanely uncomfortable to sleep in. Still, it was strange seeing his hair down and loose around his face. It made him look softer somehow. Katsuki had the vague sense that this should be awkward, or at least physically uncomfortable, but it wasn't. It was actually kind of nice, which was something he intended to unpack when he was properly awake. For now, he was going back to sleep. Even though he dozed off, Katsuki didn't really properly fall asleep again, instead remaining in the early morning not quite asleep, not quite awake gray area until he felt Kirishima stir, then stiffen up, then scramble gracelessly out of his arms and off the bed with a yelp and a loud thump. Katsuki sat up and gazed down at a very red, very distressed-looking Kirishima lying on his back on the floor.
"Nice going, hair for brains,"
he said dryly. Kirishima smiled sheepishly at him. "Morning, Bakugou."
"Did you break anything?"
"Come on, man," Kirishima whined. "Give me some credit. I'm sturdier than that." Katsuki gave him a deep, skeptical look, but let the subject drop, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and taking a second stretch. He had the kind of gross, I've been wearing this school uniform for nearly 24 hours and also slept in it feeling, and he knew his breath was probably rank. His teeth felt like they had fuzz on them.
"Is your family going to be weird if I use the shower?"
he asked, kicking Kirishima in the side to get his attention. If he were at Uraraka's, he'd be gone already, but since Kirishima's family thought they were dating, there was a risk of assumptions being made. Kirishima's face, which had returned to its normal color, flushed red again. I think they kind of expect it. My mom's took Toshiko out to the aquarium for the morning, and Sayuri was pretty clear about how she thought we'd be using our alone time," he explained. "I was going to warn you about it when I got back from telling them you were staying, so you could, mentally prepare, but you were asleep, so..."
"Christ,"
Katsuki said.
"Even if I was dating someone my mom approved of, she would probably install fucking cameras rather than leave us alone in the house."
Kirishima laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, well, in Sayuri's words, it's going to happen, so it might as well happen somewhere where you won't get arrested for public indecency." Given Ashido, Sero, and Kaminari's horror stories about Sayuri's safe sex talks, that attitude wasn't exactly out of character.
"Good to know. I'm borrowing some clothes, too."
Kirishima looked like he was about to protest, but he took another look at Katsuki's wrinkled school uniform and seemed to think better of it. "Yeah, all right. Bathroom's down the hall. I'll leave something at the door for you." Katsuki nodded and left the bedroom, managing to find the bathroom with minimal difficulty. Trying to figure out someone else's shower was, as always, unnecessarily complex, but he got it in the end. The hot water and being able to get rid of a day's worth of grime on his body was nice. Being pulled fully into the world of the waking was a bit more of a mixed blessing, because now that Katsuki was more alert, he was also acutely aware of how goddamn weird this entire situation was, and it only got worse once he got out of the shower. He'd woken up cuddling Kirishima, in Kirishima's bed, and now he was wearing his clothes after having used his shower. That was starting to seriously blur the line between fake dating and actually fucking dating. The worst part of all of this was, Katsuki thought while he stopped by Kirishima's room to grab his phone, he didn't actually mind much. At all, actually. The final nail in the coffin was when Katsuki got to the dining room threshold. He could see Kirishima from there, in the kitchen, humming and dancing along to some music he'd put on while he was cooking something. Kirishima hadn't noticed him yet. His hair was still down, and while the sky had gotten progressively more overcast since Katsuki had first woken up, the kitchen still had enough light in it that it made Kirishima's hair kind of glow, and he was smiling to himself, and suddenly Katsuki couldn't fucking breathe. Because the thing was, Katsuki got beauty. Sero had explained it once, in one of the rare moments where any of Kirishima's friends had said something intelligent. "I'm an artist, dude. Of course I understand beauty. It's not objective. There's still taste in there, but I can appreciate a flower, or a sunset, or the fact that Todoroki meets all the standards of the Vitruvian man without being attracted to any of them. It's just aesthetics." And that made sense to Katsuki. He'd always been able to get people that were pretty. but it was always, like Sero had said, aesthetics. When he'd heard attraction of any kind described in books or movies, and on one infamous occasion by Uraraka, he hadn't gotten it. It sounded ridiculous, honestly. But that weird twist in his gut as he watched Kirishima move around the kitchen, the tightness in his chest, and the way he suddenly found his eyes stuck on Kirishima's smile, that felt a hell of a lot like what Uraraka had described a crush feeling like. "Oh, hey, I didn't hear you come down," Kirishima said, looking up from what he was doing and smiling at Katsuki, which made the tightness in his chest so much worse. "I can really only make eggs, so Are you okay, dude?"
"I'm fine,"
Katsuki snapped a little more intensely than he meant to. He had to get out of here. Now.
"Uraraka texted me. She needs help studying."
"Oh," Kirishima said. Katsuki thought for a second that he saw a flash of disappointment in Kirishima's eyes, but it was gone so fast he was sure he imagined it.
"Yeah,"
Katsuki said, turning on his heel and heading for the door. Rudeness be damned. He heard the sound of Kirishima behind him as Kirishima turned off the burner and set aside the pan, followed by running feet as Kirishima followed him to the door, because of course he did, it's fucking Kirishima and he's like that, holy fuck. Katsuki's palms were sweating so much that his phone was starting to slip out of his grasp, and Kirishima hovering while he put on his shoes wasn't fucking helping. "Do you want to lift to Uraraka's?" Kirishima asked.
"No, it's a short walk. I'll be fine,"
Katsuki said. He didn't know if that was true or not, but being stuck in the car with Kirishima right now was, if not the worst thing he could imagine, pretty high up on the fucking list. "Are you sure?" Kirishima pressed, frowning. "The weather's starting to get gross again."
"I like the rain,"
Katsuki said, only partially aware of the words coming out of his mouth through the blinding need to get away. "Okay, I'll see you on Monday, right?" The fucking smile was back, and Katsuki needed to be literally anywhere else that wasn't here.
"Yeah, bye."
He was out the door before Kirishima had a chance to respond. He made it about a block before the sky opened up and started pouring. There was even a distant rumble of thunder. Katsuki fucking hated the rain. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for Chapter 7. I hope that you've enjoyed the fic so far, and I hope that you will consider coming back to joining me for the next piece, which will be Chapter 8. See you next time. I need to look up how to pronounce a word because I don't know what it is. Because I also don't understand math. What the hell? Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know that you blocked that ad.